Welcome to the fish tank.
Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to another video. As I said in Sunday's upload, for the last few days we have had a break in the heat here. It's been really nice to have some comfortable temperatures and actually be able to get some work done. But as you can tell by the hum in the background, I have a fan going and that break is now over. The upside though is I spent that time and actually got a lot of the renovations done in the fish room. I cut down the rack, got it moved, I re-drilled everything, got it put back together and in its new position, and also did the replumbing for the old water drain system so the new stuff could fit into it. Got the brackets made, and the next few days hopefully I'll put the pads on the rails, pressure wash the floor underneath there, and get the tanks back in place and start setting those up so I can get on to a bunch of other builds that have been put on hold. Because of that, I didn't really have enough time for any kind of elaborate build, so I decided to do something a little easier and something that I've actually been meaning to get to for a little while. If you remember from probably too long ago, I was intending to do some versions of hides. Mostly I was planning on using that bakeable terracotta, the one that you can put in the oven to cure, and I was going to make some stuff that way. But again, I didn't really have much time for that sort of thing. But along those lines are things you can do with air stones. In this case, technically these are rocks or stones, but instead of looking like a little blue round rock in the bottom of your fish tank, this is just going to look like slate and any other sort of thing that you would, normal rock that you would put in the bottom of an aquarium. So the intent here, initially, I'm going to do two of them here, but I haven't made one of these in a very long time, and I remembered the last time I made them, they are really hard on drill bits. So the initial one I made here, I'm just using some old drill bits I had, ones that I don't really care what happens to them. They're just a little bit rusty, they're not really sharp anymore, and if I dull them even more, it doesn't really matter. I figured the holes will be a little bit too big, but I wanted to try it out. This is kind of like my dry run, if you like, and seeing how this all works. So what I've done here so far is I've just gouged out a hole in the rock so that I can create a channel and have a place for the air to go. So now I'm going to pop in, I just chose 6 holes. It doesn't, actually I don't think it really matters much. One's probably way too few, but you can have as many as you like, of course. I chose 6 because of the size I had of the groove I cut, and also because this is a large drill bit. Again, it's one I had that was sitting around, but also the other thing I'm concerned about is this is slate. It's not hard rock. It's sedimentary rock, and it can fracture and crack quite easily. So you can see I'm taking my time here, and I'm being very gentle with it. And because I'm just drilling this out with a drill bit, there's some deflection sometimes, so I have to make sure I'm not going to snap a drill bit off in this. Like I said, I'm just taking my time and testing this out. And as far as this went, the whole process worked quite well. I didn't actually have any hiccups whatsoever. It was quite easy. But then again, when I chose the piece of slate, I have a whole pile in the background you can see just sitting there. I went through a bunch of them and I did some test drilling on a few, and this one here didn't have any what I would call inclusions in it. Sometimes if you have a piece of slate, it'll have other harder rocks embedded in it, and if you try drilling through it, you end up hitting the harder rock, and then because there's a difference in hardness between the two of them, you end up having a crack issue. So fortunately that didn't happen. So what I'm going to do here, because this was a rock that was in an aquarium at one point in time, I'm going to sand it down just to get the any kind of organic matter that might be on the outside of it, and make sure it's reasonably clean. I could have washed it, I suppose, but then again I have to wait for it to dry. And because I was doing all the other stuff, I am on a bit of a time crunch even to get this done. The funny thing is, this is, I think it was Monday afternoon I was doing this one, and I had enough time to let it dry and whatnot. But when I start doing the next one, I was doing that Tuesday, and there wasn't even enough time for the silicone to cure. So I had to be extra careful when I was filming the final results for the smaller version, because if I put too much air in it, it would have ended up popping out the little fitting for the airline tubing, and I wouldn't have had enough time to film anything else for it. So this one's pretty much ready to glue up now. It's just a matter of running a bead of silicone around this. It's very straightforward, and silicone will adhere to slate very well. Any of you who've built little pleco caves and or just rock displays in your aquarium know that silicone and rock get along really well, and it's the ideal glue for that sort of thing. And this is, like I said, just making sure I don't add too much, but enough to hide any imperfections in the rock so that none of the air escapes where I don't want it to. Now you'll notice that right in where I put the groove, it's not silicone at all. That's fine, because this hole here is too small. I have to bore it out, and that's going to happen after this cures. So it's just a simple matter of just letting this in place. You don't need to clamp it or anything, and then it's just a matter of waiting 24 hours. So that time's gone by now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the old drill bit. Now, when I was doing this part didn't really matter to me. You can see how well they stick together. If you don't have a lathe, you can still do this. You just need to use a drill bit that is the same size as the airline tubing, the rigid tubing that you use for airline. That's all you need to do, is just drill the hole that size. But at this point, I really didn't want to, like I said, ruin a good drill bit for this. So I'm just using the old one here, and then I'm going to just make a bushing for it afterwards. And as you can tell, before I speed this up, it's going to be a few seconds before I speed it up. This is how slow I'm taking it. Because, first off, it's rough and shale, so it's not like it's drilling into a flat surface. So the drill bit is taking more pressure on one side than on the other until the hole actually gets formed. So that puts a little bit more like a little extra amount of chance, I guess, of this thing cracking. So I'm just taking my time here. And once the drill bit gets down into it, there you go. I'm speeding it up now. This is actually quite easy at this point. The silicone's cured, but because silicone cures by exposure to oxygen, the deeper down I go, the more chance that I'm going to run into some uncured silicone as well. So again, that could bind up in the drill bit. Just other things to keep in mind so that you don't end up ruining this. Well, there you go. That is as simple as that is. And if I had have used a 1/4 inch, that's all the dust that gets in the hole. If I had used a 1/4 inch drill bit on this, all it would be now is just a simple matter of putting a rigid piece of airline tubing there, and that would be done. So instead, I machined a quick fitting out of brass. It only takes a few minutes, and that will fit in here. I will silicone that in place, because it doesn't have to be a friction type fit. The silicone will be the buffer for everything. So this one had time to cure, so I just put the air to it right off the bat, and you can see that it has quite the capacity for bubbles. These bubbles are too big. It'd be fine in like a large cichlid tank, something where you really want to create a lot of turbulence, as you can see, and I'll probably put this to use. But for these 15-gallon tanks, it is a little bit much. And you can see, all I'm doing right now is I'm just crimping the hose a little bit, and you can see once it goes down to a reasonable pressure, it just ends up going all through one hole. So that's fine. But again, this was my test. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a smaller piece. You don't need to use these large rocks. I mean, I could have easily used a smaller one than this even. And I will probably do one sort of like just a a one of later on out of a tiny rock, just to show you that it's possible. But you can see you can cut it with a hacksaw. I mean, slate and shale are really good for that. You just have to be a little bit careful when you get near to the end of it, because you can end up with what's called shelling, and it'll just flake off at the end. I actually had a little bit of it here, but it was just a tiny amount, so it wouldn't really affect the build at all. See that little bit of a piece right there? And it's a simple matter of just snapping that off. Now, I could have cut this down a lot, and I actually thought about doing it, but I was, again, running out of time. This is Tuesday night at this point, and I needed to get this as functional as possible, so I didn't get too elaborate in this. So what I'm going to do this time, though, as well, instead of, I'm using a milling machine here, and it's not really necessary. This is actually something you can do at home with a handheld drill, and just all you need is a piece of wood, a clamp of some kind. I'm using a vice grip, and all you need is just pop a couple of quick shallow holes here. Not being that precise about it, and I'm not using the milling feature of this. I'm not. And the first one, I would once I drilled all these little holes, I put the drill bit down further and then just move the bed around just to flatten everything out. I'm not going to do that this time. So this is simply what you can accomplish quite easily with a hand drill, and then I'm gonna risk one of my better drill bits here, and this is the finest one I have, and I'm going to drill a few small holes. Now, because I haven't flattened out the bottom of this, what I'm doing initially is I'm going to, each of those 3 drill bit holes that I put in with the larger drill bit, I'm going to the center of one of those, and that way it won't have a chance of traveling anywhere. And then I'm going to flip it over here, as you see, and I'm going to just run, because this surface is now flat, I'm just going to put a few extra holes, so it's going to be 5 altogether. So there you go. Very easy, simple project. I'm going to just glue these together and then run a 1/4 inch hole through it. Yeah, I didn't even run a trough for this one. Completely not necessary. So I'm going to run that trough, and then I'm going to stick a piece of airline tubing in it and bend it, and I left all that out because this video is already really too long, and now I'm just going to run some air through it. And this one actually worked quite a bit better. I think it could be even smaller if I had a smaller drill bit, but I don't. So anyway, if you like this style of video, please like and or subscribe, and always leave lots of comments and let me know what you think of this. It's, like I said, it's an easy project, quite simple for anyone to do. It just has a hand drill and a hacksaw, and you can cut this stuff up, and it's, like I said, it's really easy to do. And this one here is actually quite functional for this size of aquarium. Again, I needed to put an air stone on it, a valve on it, but I didn't have one kicking around. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video, and bye for now.